Hi mamas, Emily here. Welcome back to my channel, or a very warm welcome if you happen to be new here. Today's video is going to be another breastfeeding topic. We will be discussing oversupply as well as overactive letdown. So if there's any mamas out there who may be struggling with these two things, or if you're wondering if you might have oversupply, this video is just for you. So without further ado, let's get right into the video. When your baby is first born, it is very normal to be engorged for those first 4 to 6 weeks. Your body is simply trying to figure out how much milk your baby needs. But for some mamas, myself included, that engorgement or very full feeling stays around for much longer than those first couple months. This is when it is considered oversupply. One is that your breasts never really seem emptied. You are constantly engorged, your breasts always feel full and just always really uncomfortable. 2, your breasts fill back up rather quickly. I can vividly remember my son being about 4 months old and nursing him taking in a full feeding, and then literally 2 hours later I was engorged again, which is not normal. 3, multiple bouts of mastitis. And 4, recurrent plugged ducts. Overactive, or also called forceful letdown, is when your milk lets down at a very forceful rate. So instead of your milk lightly spraying or flowing into your baby's mouth, it is very forcefully spraying in their mouth, much like a hose or a faucet. While you can have oversupply and overactive letdown separately, they very often go hand in hand. Overactive or forceful letdown may or may not be painful. I had overactive letdown and it was never uncomfortable or painful for me, but I do know of a lot of moms who say forceful or overactive letdown is very painful and uncomfortable. We now have a new addition to the video. He's supposed to be napping, but he's getting a molar and he is very fussy and uncomfortable. So he is going to be joining us for the rest of this video. So number 2 symptom of mom having overactive letdown is if your milk sprays out when your baby unlatches during a feeding or during that initial letdown. But milk does not have to be spraying out of your breast in order for you to have overactive letdown. I have never been one to spray or leak milk, but I did in fact have overactive letdown. Sign number 1 that your baby may exhibit if you have overactive letdown is if they cough, choke, or sputter during a feeding during that initial letdown. This means that your baby is having trouble keeping up with the flow of milk that's going into their mouth. Sign number 2 is your baby may clamp down or bite on your nipple during the feeding. This is because they're trying to slow down the flow of milk or stop the flow of milk, and the only way they know how to do that is to bite or clamp down. Sign number 3 is your baby may pop on and off the breast during that initial letdown because the flow is frustrating and too much for them to handle. Sign number 4 is your baby may gain weight very, very fast relative to what's considered a normal weight gain because they are taking in such a large volume of milk in a very, very short amount of time. Sign number 5 is your baby may be very fussy in between feedings and may want to feed very often. So even though your baby is taking in a large volume of milk at one time, they're taking in mostly foremilk, which is lower in fat compared to hind milk, so it's not as satiating. Number 1 is since your baby is taking in such a large volume of milk in a short amount of time, they're going to be taking in a lot of air with that also, thus leading to maybe some reflux or a lot of spitting up. Number 2 is your baby may be very gassy because once again, with that large volume of milk that they're intaking, they're also taking in a lot of air, which causes excess gas in their system. Number 3 is your baby might also have green, mucusy, explosive poops. The gas and green poops comes from taking in an imbalance of foremilk and hindmilk. Okay, so now that we've discussed what overactive letdown and oversupply is, let's go into some remedies to combat both these things. My first tip for you is when your first initial letdown occurs, you will unlatch your baby and then let your letdown spray into a towel, burp cloth, or into maybe if you have a haka or a milk saver, or just a cup will do. And then once the flow of milk slows down, you can latch your baby back onto your breast and finish the feeding. That will make the flow of milk much more manageable for your baby to handle. If you happen to not leak or you can't feel your letdown, then what I would do is just watch your baby, and once they start to struggle at the breast, so if they're gulping or starting to cough or sputter, that is when you would unlatch them, and then what you can do is hand express into a towel, burp cloth, or into a cup or a milk collection device. Once the flow of milk goes from like really forceful sprays into just a lighter flow, lighter spray, then you can latch your baby back on and finish the feeding. Let down. Tip number 2 is you can try laid back nursing. Laid back nursing is essentially when you're nursing at an incline. So gravity is your arch nemesis when it comes to overactive letdown. So anything you can do to combat gravity is greatly going to help your baby keep up with your flow of milk. You can also try side lying nursing position to help with overactive letdown. This is actually one that I used a ton with my son and greatly helped with that overactive letdown. Number 1 is to hand express before a feeding to relieve some of that pressure as well as some of that foremilk. Hand expressing a little bit of that milk will also help if you have overactive letdown, as releasing some of that milk before you latch your baby on will relieve some of that excess pressure, and the milk should not flow out as forcefully. Tip number 2 is to hand express in between feedings to also help with engorgement and relieve a little bit of pressure. But I would have to say about this is you only want to hand express a little bit. Like I said, just to relieve pressure, just to help with that engorgement. If you hand express too much, then that's only going to increase your milk supply more. Tip number 3 I have for you is something called block feeding. Now with block feeding, I would only proceed with this if A, you have a very big oversupply, and also if you've tried everything else and nothing is helping. I would definitely proceed with block feeding with caution, as it is going to decrease your supply. So with block feeding, you are going to breastfeed your baby as often as he or she wants within a period of 4 hours before switching to the other breast. Your other breast is going to become very full of milk. When you have the excessive fullness in one side, that is going to signal to your body to start making less milk on that side. Thus, when you're only switching sides every 4 hours, the one that's getting full is going to start making less milk eventually. So if you do go forward with block feeding, I would try this for say about a day, so switching breasts every 4 hours. And if that doesn't help, then I would up it to every 6 hours. But like I said, only try this technique if you've tried everything else, nothing's working. And also I would do this under the help and guidance of a lactation consultant.
You can also try a modified block feeding approach to help with oversupply. This is for mamas who may have a more mild or moderate oversupply issue. With a modified block feeding, you would feed your baby from only one breast per feeding. After the feeding, you hand express from the breast that was not nursed from. Be sure to hand express to comfort only. Then for the next feeding, you start with the breast that you hand express from previously. Once again, only feeding from one breast, and the breast not being used, hand express to comfort after nursing.
Okay, so that is it from me today. I apologize that I had my son with me. Usually he's napping when I'm filming, but no such luck today. So it is what it is. If you liked any part of this video or found it helpful, would you please give it a thumbs up? I would greatly appreciate it. And be sure to subscribe if you want to see more videos from me, and hit the little bell notification so you know every time I post a video. Thank you so much for spending time with me today, and I will see you in the next one.